Zixnax couldn't believe his 4 eyes. There, amidst the smoking ruins of what was once the proudest city on Gliese 867c, stood the most ridiculous-looking creature he'd ever seen. It was squishy and pink, and it had the audacity to wave at him with one of its disturbingly flexible appendages. Hello there," the creature called out, its voice carrying an odd, warbling quality that made Zixnax's antennae twitch involuntarily. "I come in peace. Also, I'm a bit lost. And hungry. Got any, non-toxic to human snacks lying around?" Zixnax blinked rapidly, all 4 eyelids fluttering in perfect asynchronicity. Was this some kind of joke? A hallucination brought on by the stress of the never-ending war with the Vuralix? He turned to his subordinate, Klepak, who looked just as bewildered as he felt. "You see it too, right?" Zixnax whispered, his mandibles clicking nervously. Klepak nodded slowly, his crest changing from a confused purple to an alarmed orange. "If by it you mean the fleshy abomination that just popped out of nowhere in the middle of our war zone, then yes, Supreme Commander. I see it." The pink creature was now approaching them, its face contorted into what Zixnax could only assume was some sort of threat display. Its mouth was stretched wide, revealing a row of disturbingly white, blunt teeth. "Hi there," it chirped, coming to a stop just a few feet away. "I'm Dr. Zoe Quark, human medic extraordinaire. And you are?" She extended one of her upper appendages towards Zixnax. Zixnax recoiled, his exoskeleton bristling. "I am Supreme Commander Zixnax of the Glesian Defense Force, and you, strange thing, are trespassing in a restricted war zone." Dr. Quark's face fell, her mouth forming a small O of surprise. "Oh, shoot. War zone? Really? Well, that explains all the explosions and general air of despair. I thought maybe you guys just had a really intense fireworks festival going on." Klepak leaned in close to Zixnax. "Sir, should we vaporize it?" Zixnax considered this for a moment. On one hand, the creature, this human, was clearly a security risk. On the other hand, it was the most interesting thing to happen in this goddess-forsaken war in cycles. Not yet, he decided. Let's see what it wants first. Dr. Quark, oblivious to the fact that her continued existence had just been debated, was now rummaging through a bag strapped to her side. "So, listen, I know I'm kind of gate-crashing your little interplanetary disagreement here, but I was wondering if you could use some help. I'm a doctor, you see, and, oh, sweet Tesla's coils." Her exclamation coincided with a massive explosion that rocked the ground beneath their feet. In the distance, a plume of sickly green smoke rose into the air. "Vrilk's biobombs!" Klepak shouted, his crest now a terrified white. "They're targeting the civilian shelters!" Zixnax felt his heart sink. The shelters were where they'd hidden the young, the old, the injured, those who couldn't fight, including his own clutch of hatchlings. Dr. Quark's eyes widened. "Civilians? Kids? Oh, hell no, not on my watch." And before either Glesian could stop her, she took off running towards the explosion, her odd two-legged gait surprisingly swift. "After her," Zixnax ordered, more out of reflex than any real plan. He and Klepak gave chase, their 6 legs carrying them easily across the rubble-strewn landscape. As they approached the shelter, the acrid stench of the bioweapon filled the air. Zixnax felt his spiracles constricting, struggling to filter out the toxins. How could the human even breathe in this? They found Dr. Quark kneeling beside a small Glesian child, her hands moving quickly as she pressed some kind of device against the child's thorax. The child's exoskeleton was discolored, showing signs of the bioweapon's effects. "What are you doing to that hatchling?" Zixnax demanded, his voice a mix of anger and fear. Dr. Quark didn't even look up. "Saving her life, hopefully. This little gal's got some nasty toxins in her system, but luckily I've seen worse. Spring break on Rigel 7. Now that was a biological disaster. As they watched in stunned silence, the child's colour began to improve. Her breathing, which had been laboured and irregular, steadied. "There we go," Dr. Quark exclaimed, sitting back on her haunches with a satisfied grin. "One alien kiddo, now 95% less likely to succumb to horrific bioweapons. Who's next?" Zixnax and Klepak exchanged glances. This was unprecedented. "You can neutralize the Vrilk's toxins?" Zixnax asked, barely daring to hope. Dr. Quark shrugged. "Well, neutralize is a strong word. More like aggressively encourage the body to reject, while simultaneously boosting the immune response and counteracting the worst symptoms. But yeah, sure. Let's go with neutralize. Sounds cooler." For the first time in longer than he could remember, Zixnax felt a glimmer of hope. "There are hundreds more inside the shelter," he said. "Can you help them?" Dr. Quark's face split into that unsettling teeth-baring expression again. "Hundreds of patients in need of immediate care, limited resources, and a high chance of painful death if I screw up? Sounds like a Tuesday. Lead the way, big guy." As they rushed into the shelter, Zixnax couldn't help but wonder if this strange, squishy creature might just change the course of their war, and possibly give him an aneurysm in the process. 12 hours later, Dr. Zoe Quark emerged from the civilian shelter, covered in various alien bodily fluids, and looking like she'd just gone 3 rounds with a particle accelerator. But she was grinning from ear to ear.
"Woo!"
she whooped, pumping a fist in the air.
"That's what I call a successful mass triage! Take that, you nasty little bioengineered molecules of doom!"
Zixnax, who had been anxiously pacing outside, rushed up to her. "The hatchlings? The elders? Are they—" Dr. Quark's grin softened into a smile. "They're going to be just fine, Commander Zix. Well, as fine as one can be in the middle of an interplanetary war. But the immediate danger from the bioweapon has passed." The tension that had been coiled in Zixnax's thorax for hours finally released. His crest, which had been a sickly grey of worry, bloomed into a vibrant blue of relief and gratitude. I don't know how to thank you, Dr. Quark," he said, his mandibles clicking in what passed for a Gleasian smile. Dr. Quark waved a hand dismissively. "Oh, psh! No thanks necessary. It's kind of my thing, you know. Dropping into war zones, patching up the locals, accidentally sparking interspecies diplomatic incidents. Speaking of which..." She jerked a thumb over her shoulder towards the shelter entrance. "You, might want to come see this." Confused and more than a little apprehensive, Zixnax followed Dr. Quark back into the shelter. What he saw inside nearly made his 4 eyes pop out of his head. There, in the middle of the main chamber, surrounded by curious Gleasian children, was a Vrilk's warrior. But instead of brandishing weapons or spewing threats, it was juggling. With its lower set of arms, it was tossing small pieces of rubble in a mesmerizing pattern, while its upper arms were gently patting the heads of the Gleasian hatchlings. "What in the name of the great hive mother is going on here?" Zixnax sputtered. Dr. Quark crossed her arms, looking entirely too pleased with herself. "Funny story, actually. Turns out, while I was in there playing whack-a-toxin, this little lady," she gestured to the Verilex, "came crawling in through a hole in the wall. Seems she'd been hit by some of your return fire and was looking for a place to hole up and die dramatically." The Verilex warrior, hearing them, looked up. Its compound eyes sparkled with an emotion Zixnax had never associated with their mortal enemies before. Amusement. "Greetings, Supreme Commander Zixnax," the Verilex said, its voice a melodious buzz. "I am Scout Leader Bzit of the Verilex Expeditionary Force, and I must say, your hatchlings are utterly charming." Zixnax's mandibles worked soundlessly for a moment, before he managed to sputter. But you're our enemy. We've been at war for generations. Bzit tilted her head, antennae twitching thoughtfully. Yes, about that. I've been giving it some thought while entertaining these delightful little ones, and I've come to a conclusion. This war is, how did the pink squish doctor put it? Oh, yes, completely bonkers. Dr. Quark nodded sagely. Those were indeed my exact words. Right after holy crap, a giant bug, and right before, please don't lay eggs in my brain. Bzit continued, ignoring the interruption. You see, Supreme Commander, when I was injured and crawled in here, I expected to be finished off by your warriors. Instead, I found this strange alien creature. She gestured to Dr. Quark with one of her free arms, the others still occupied with juggling and petting, tending to your young with the same care she then showed to me. It made me question everything. Zixnax felt like his world was spinning off its axis. Question everything?
Indeed, Bzit said. Why are we fighting? What started this war? Does anyone even remember?
Zixnax opened his mouth to answer, then closed it again. He realized, with a sinking feeling in all three of his stomachs, that he didn't know. The war had been going on for so long, the original cause lost to the mists of time and propaganda. Dr. Quark, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, chose this moment to chime in. You know, where I come from, we have a saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, but I've always preferred a variation. The one who heals my child is no enemy at all. She looked between Zixnax and Bzit, her alien features set in an expression of determination. You two have been so busy trying to wipe each other out that you never stopped to consider if you might be stronger together. But look around you. Zixnax did. He saw Glesian and Virilk's children playing together without a care in the world. He saw injured adults from both species, helping each other, sharing food and water. He saw hope. Supreme Commander, Bzit said, her voice soft but firm. I propose a ceasefire. Not just a temporary one, but a true end to this conflict. Let us talk, not as enemies, but as potential allies, for the sake of our children, if nothing else. Zixnax felt a weight lift from his shoulders, one he hadn't even realized he'd been carrying. Yes, he said, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. Yes, I think it's long past time we did that. Dr. Quark clapped her hands together, startling several nearby hatchlings. Excellent. Now, who's up for some interspecies trust falls? No? Too soon? Fair enough. How about we start with something simpler, like a potluck dinner? I make a mean replicated protein cube casserole. As Zixnax and Bzit began to tentatively discuss the logistics of a ceasefire, Dr. Quark stood back, a satisfied smile on her face. She pulled out a small device and spoke into it. Captain's log, stardate. Oh, who am I kidding? I have no idea what stardate it is. Anyway, mission accomplished. Arrived on planet, saved some lives, accidentally brokered peace between two warring species. Not bad for a day's work. Note to self. Submit report for consideration in diplomatic incidents that somehow worked out quarterly newsletter. End log. She pocketed the device and turned back to the scene before her. Glesian and Virilx alike were now gathered around Bzit, who had expanded her juggling act to include what looked suspiciously like live plasma grenades. Dr. Quark decided that was probably her cue to step in before this fragile peace was shattered by an impromptu fireworks display. Okay, folks, she called out, clapping her hands to get everyone's attention. Who wants to learn about the fascinating human tradition of the conga line? As she began to demonstrate, leading a confused but enthusiastic line of aliens in a snaking dance around the shelter, Dr. Quark couldn't help but laugh. It wasn't every day you got to turn a war zone into a dance party. Just another day in the life of an intergalactic medic. In the days that followed, The ceasefire held. Tentative at first, like a newborn star finding its light, but growing stronger with each passing rotation. The Glesian and Varilix leaders, spurred on by the unexpected events in that civilian shelter, agreed to formal peace talks. And at the center of it all, bouncing between meetings like an overly caffeinated ping-pong ball, was Dr. Zoe Quark. "No, no, no," she said, exasperated, during one particularly tense negotiation. "You can't divide the planet down the middle like some kind of cosmic pizza. Think about the ecosystems, the migratory patterns. Not to mention it would make family reunions a nightmare." Zixnax and Bizet exchanged glances. They were starting to get used to the human's odd references and even odder logic, but sometimes she still threw them for a loop. "What do you suggest then, Dr. Quark?" Bizet asked, her antennae twitching with curiosity. Zoe grinned, that now familiar expression that usually preceded either a brilliant idea or an interplanetary incident. Sometimes both. "I'm glad you asked. Picture this. Instead of dividing, you unite. One planet, two species, working together. The Glesians' expertise in biotechnology combined with the Vrelix's advanced propulsion systems, you'd be unstoppable." "Unstoppable at what exactly?" Zixnax asked, his tone cautious but intrigued. "At whatever you want," Zoe exclaimed, throwing her arms wide and nearly knocking over a holographic display of the planet. "Scientific advancement, space exploration, competitive zero-G knitting. Sky's the limit. Well, actually, in your case, the galaxy's the limit." As the two alien leaders considered this, Zoe couldn't help but reflect on the absurdity of the situation. Here she was, a human doctor billions of light-years from Earth, playing peacemaker between two species that, up until a few days ago, had been hell-bent on wiping each other out. If her old med school professors could see her now, they'd probably faint, or demand she write a really, really detailed paper. "It could work," Bizet said slowly, her compound eyes flickering with rapidly changing colors, the Vrelix equivalent of a thoughtful frown. "Our societies have developed in isolation. Our societies have developed in isolation for so long," Bizet continued, her antennae waving thoughtfully. "Perhaps it's time we learned from each other, rather than feared each other." Zixnax nodded, his crest shifting to a contemplative shade of blue. "The potential benefits of cooperation are intriguing. Our scientists have long theorized about the possibilities of combining our biotech with Vrelix propulsion systems. The applications could be revolutionary." Dr. Quark beamed, bouncing on her toes with barely contained excitement. "Exactly. Just think of the possibilities. You could create ships that grow and heal themselves, or propulsion systems that adapt to different environments on the fly. Oh, and don't even get me started on the potential for medical advancements." She paused, noticing the bemused looks on the alien leaders' faces. "Sorry, got a bit carried away there. Occupational hazard of being a doctor/accidental diplomat." Bizet chittered softly, a sound that Dr. Quark had come to recognize as laughter. "Your enthusiasm is infectious, Dr. Quark. Perhaps that is why you've succeeded where countless negotiators have failed."
"Indeed," Zixnax agreed. "Your unique perspective and complete disregard for our long-standing animosity has been most illuminating."
Dr. Quark grinned sheepishly, running a hand through her disheveled hair. "Well, you know what they say. Sometimes it takes an outsider to point out that the Emperor has no clothes. Or, in this case, that two highly advanced alien species have been acting like squabbling toddlers over a broken toy." Both alien leaders bristled slightly at the comparison, but there was no real heat in their reactions. If anything, they seemed almost amused. "Very well," Zixnax said after a moment. "We shall put forth a proposal for gradual integration and cooperation to our respective governments. It will not be easy. Generations of conflict have left deep scars, but I believe it is the right path forward." Bizet nodded, her antennae dipping in agreement. As do I. We have much to learn from each other, and perhaps even more to learn from our unexpected human friend. Dr. Quark felt a warm glow of pride, tinged with a hint of embarrassment. Oh, shucks, guys. You're going to make me blush. Which, fun fact, is something humans do when we're embarrassed or flattered. Our capillaries dilate and, you know what, never mind. Not important right now. She clapped her hands together, her expression turning serious.
What is important is figuring out the next steps. I don't suppose either of your species has experience in post-war reconciliation and integration?
The blank looks she received were answer enough. Right, she sighed. Looks like we've got our work cut out for us. But hey, if we can go from trying to annihilate each other to considering joint space ventures in less than a week, I'd say we're already ahead of the curve. As the meeting adjourned and plans were made for further discussions, Dr. Quark couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. Sure, she'd come to this planet by accident. Note to self, triple-check transporter coordinates next time. And sure, she'd initially just been looking for a bathroom and a snack. But somehow, through a combination of medical know-how, diplomatic bumbling, and sheer human stubbornness, she'd managed to nudge two warring species towards peace.
Not bad for a day's work. Or a week's work. Actually, what day was it? Time seemed to blur when you were hopping between alien peace talks and emergency medical interventions.
As she followed Zixnax and Bizet out of the meeting room, Dr. Quark's mind was already racing with plans. They'd need cultural exchange programs, joint scientific initiatives, maybe some kind of interspecies sports league. Oh, and food. Nothing brought people, or aliens, together like food.
Hey!
She called out, jogging to catch up with the alien leaders.
Quick question. How do you guys feel about potluck dinners?
3 solar cycles later, the planet once known as Gliese 867c, now officially renamed Harmony in both Glesian and Virilix languages, was hosting its first interspecies cooperation summit. The event was being held in a newly constructed biodome that showcased the best of both species' architectural styles, soaring Glesian crystal spires intertwined with organic Virilix growth structures. Dr. Zoe Quark stood at the podium, still somewhat in disbelief that she was delivering the keynote address. She cleared her throat, adjusting the universal translator pinned to her collar.
Distinguished guests, honoured leaders, and, whatever the collective noun is for a group of Vrilx larvae. Swarm? Clutch? We'll work on that. Anyway, welcome to this historic summit.
She paused, looking out over the sea of alien faces. Glesian and Virilx sat side by side, their former enmity replaced by curiosity and cautious optimism. In the front row, Zixnax and Bizet nodded encouragingly. 3 cycles ago, I quite literally dropped into your war. I came looking for a bathroom and maybe a snack, and instead found 2 proud species locked in a conflict whose origins were lost to time. Now, I stand before you not as an outsider, but as a friend, watching as you take your first steps towards a shared future. Dr. Quark grinned, unable to contain her enthusiasm. And let me tell you, what a future it is shaping up to be. Already your joint scientific teams have made breakthroughs that are, quite frankly, making this human doctor feel a bit inadequate. Self-healing starships, adaptive biomechanical prosthetics. Guys, save some world-changing inventions for the rest of the galaxy, will you? A ripple of what she hoped was laughter went through the audience. Alien humour was still a bit of a minefield, but she was getting better at navigating it, usually. But beyond the technological advancements, it's the social progress that truly amazes me. Watching Glesian and Virilx children play together, seeing mixed-species research teams excitedly sharing discoveries, even overhearing the occasional interspecies romantic entanglement. And boy, is that an interesting process to witness. These are the real victories. She paused, her expression growing more serious. Of course, it hasn't all been smooth sailing. There have been setbacks, misunderstandings, and more than a few cultural faux pas. Did you know that in Vrilk's culture, enthusiastic arm-waving is a declaration of war, not a friendly greeting? Yeah, that was a fun day. This time, the laughter was unmistakable. Even Bizette was chittering softly, her antennae waving in amusement. But through it all, you've persevered. You've chosen understanding over fear, cooperation over conflict. And in doing so, you've not only changed the course of your own history, but provided an example for the rest of the galaxy to follow. Dr. Quark's voice softened, filled with genuine emotion. When I first arrived here, I was just a lost human with a medical bag and a bad habit of sticking my nose where it doesn't belong. You could have easily dismissed me, or worse. Instead, you listened. You opened your hearts, all 6 of them, in the case of the Glesians, and gave peace a chance. She straightened up, her eyes sparkling with excitement. And now? Now you stand on the brink of a new era, an era of joint space exploration, of shared scientific discovery, of cultural exchange that will enrich both your societies. Heck, I even heard rumors of a Glesian Vrilix fusion cuisine restaurant opening in the capital. If that's not progress, I don't know what is. As she concluded her speech, laying out her hopes for the future of Harmony and its people, Dr. Quark couldn't help but feel a twinge of bittersweetness. Her time here was coming to an end. Soon, she'd be heading back to her own slice of the galaxy, leaving behind the world she'd helped to change. But as she looked out at the faces before her, Glesian and Vrilx alike, all filled with hope and determination, she knew that Harmony was in good hands, or claws, or pincers, whatever. In conclusion, she said, her voice ringing out clear and strong, I'd like to propose a toast to Harmony. Not just the name of this planet, but the spirit of cooperation and understanding that now defines it. May your 2 species continue to grow together, to learn from each other, and to reach for the stars. Who knows? Maybe one day you'll be the ones stumbling onto some war-torn planet and accidentally brokering peace. Just, try to stick the landing better than I did, okay? As laughter and applause filled the biodome, Dr. Zoe Quark stepped back from the podium, a satisfied smile on her face. Not bad for a misplaced medic with a knack for intergalactic incidents. Now, if she could just figure out how to get home without causing any more accidental revolutions, that would be great. But knowing her luck, this was probably just the beginning of her unintentional peacekeeping career. She couldn't wait to see where she'd land next.